Mackenzie Shirilla, a case of a wrongful conviction. This is part 4. In this part we will discuss the following: vehicle design and post-crash evaluation. Vehicle design. Mechanical issues, design flaw, or common safety feature overlooked. The vehicle was examined by a qualified vehicle mechanical expert who testified it appeared that the vehicle was in good operating condition prior to the crash. While this evidence seems conclusive, it still does not prove that Mackenzie intentionally caused the crash. It only proves that the vehicle was operating normally. However, looking at photos and video released since the crash, it is interesting that the witness stated this, considering the engine compartment was severely damaged. How could such a determination be made? The next slide will show a still frame from one of the officer's body camera who responded to the crash. Notice the extent of the damage done to the front end of the vehicle. As we can see in the still frame of the body camera, the damage to the front end of the vehicle is severe. No doubt the vehicle was traveling at excessive speed. The prosecution firmly believes that this was fully intentional. However, with that said, from a vehicle standpoint there are two items that could have played a role in the crash. One is a potential defect and the other is an oversight as part of the overall design of the vehicle itself. Both of these issues rest firmly with the vehicle manufacturer, Toyota. Since we are not 100% certain as to what is going on inside of the vehicle at the time of the crash, a mechanical examination of the vehicle must be looked at. According to page number 41 of Detective Haz's notes, the mechanic inspection conducted by Mark Sargent of Fire and Explosion Consultants, a third-party investigation services company. According to Mr. Sargent, the vehicle was free of defect at the time of the event and showed no evidence of a malfunction cause or contributing to the event. Mr. Sargent also noted Mackenzie's slipper and said, the slipper in and of itself would not have resulted in any type of unwanted throttle application. The slipper was solely stuck by the deformation of the floorboard that surrounded the accelerator assembly as a result of the impact event. Also noted was the vehicle was in compliance with the Toyota Safety Recall Number 21TA09, which addresses concerns of the braking system. However, what was not addressed were reports to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration about unintended acceleration.
Other worrying recalls for the 2018 Camry include one in February of 2018 for nearly 12,000 V6 equipped units with potential fuel leaks, 2 recalls for fuel pump failure, one in January of 2020 for nearly 2 million Toyotas, and another in November of 2020 for around 1.5 million Toyotas. Lastly, an engine stall recall was issued in March of 2018 for 1,732 2018s with 2.5-liter engines. Unfortunately, this last recall may not have been the end of the engine stall problem, as this is a leading complaint in the 85 engine reports listed on the NHTSA website. These complaints have continued into 2022, for years since the initial recall, with drivers reporting engine stall when attempting to accelerate at lower speeds, and then, in some cases, taking off like a jet once it finally gets moving.
Again, since we are not 100% certain as to what is going on inside of the vehicle at the time of the crash, we are only left to speculate. With documented proof from other 2018 Toyota Camry owners with a 2.5-liter engine, the same model as Mackenzie's Camry, it is yet another possible explanation to this terrible and unintentional motor vehicle accident. The second concern is with the emergency braking system and the procedures on how to stop the vehicle in case of an emergency. This is an excerpt from the 2018 Toyota Camry Owner's Manual. Page number 487 of the manual describes what to do in case the vehicle needs to be stopped in an emergency.
If your vehicle has to be stopped in an emergency, only in an emergency, such as if it becomes impossible to stop the vehicle in the normal way, Stop the vehicle using the following procedure. Step number 1. Steadily step on the brake pedal with both feet and firmly depress it. Do not pump the brake pedal repeatedly, as this will increase the effort required to slow the vehicle. Step number 2. Shift the shift lever to neutral. If the shift lever is shifted to neutral. Step number 3. After slowing down, stop the vehicle in a safe place by the road. Step number 4. Stop the engine. If the shift lever cannot be shifted to neutral. Step number 3. Keep depressing the brake pedal with both feet to reduce vehicle speed as much as possible. For vehicles without a smart key system, stop the engine by turning the engine switch to the ACC position. For vehicles with a smart key system, to stop the engine, press and hold the engine switch for 2 consecutive seconds or more, or press it briefly 3 times or more in succession. Step number 5. Stop the vehicle in a safe place by the road.
Step number 1 says, steadily step on the brake pedal with both feet and firmly depress it. How would a passenger be able to do this if the driver of the vehicle were to suddenly experience unconsciousness or was incapacitated and the passenger's feet is blocked by the center console? The very design of the vehicle with the floor-mounted shifter and center console makes it difficult, if not impossible, for a front seat passenger to take control of the vehicle from an incapacitated driver. This model of vehicle does not have an emergency hand brake on the center console for a passenger to utilize to slow the vehicle down. The only auxiliary brake is one labeled as parking brake, designed to be used after all motion has stopped. The photo to the right shows the standard floor-mounted transmission of a 2018 Toyota Camry, hybrid version. The gear selector is the raised stalk with P for park, R for reverse, N for neutral, and D for drive, indicators in front. As you move rearward towards the center armrest, you have 5 buttons and a push-down/pull-up switch. The photo to the right shows a close-up view of the previously mentioned buttons and push-down/pull-up switch. The first 3 buttons are labeled as Eco. Help achieve low fuel consumption during trips that involve frequent accelerating. Normal. Normal everyday driving. Sport. When increased acceleration response and precise handling is desired, for example, when driving on mountain roads. Source, if equipped with such switches according to the Toyota Camry owner's manual. The next 2 buttons are labeled as Hold. This is the brake hold button. Its purpose is to allow the driver to remove their foot from the brake pedal but disengages when the accelerator is depressed. EV mode. This button is only present in Camry hybrid models. It engages the hybrid function of the vehicle. The next 2 buttons are labeled as Hold. This is the brake hold button. Its purpose is to allow the driver to remove their foot from the brake pedal but disengages when the accelerator is depressed. EV mode. This button is only present in Camry hybrid models. It engages the hybrid function of the vehicle. This switch is not intended, nor does it function, as an emergency brake or e-brake feature. It only engages when the vehicle is in park. The design of the 2018 Toyota Camry doesn't include a traditional floor emergency brake pedal, nor does it include an emergency brake handle on the center console like the examples shown to the right. Again, this brings up the question. In case of a driver's incapacitation, how does a passenger slow the car down when traditional emergency controls are not available? Post-crash evaluation. Upon arrival at the scene, police officers did an initial check and determined that there were 3 occupants in the vehicle. Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion. Police determined that Mackenzie had a pulse, was breathing, and was unconscious. Mackenzie was trapped by the dashboard of her vehicle and was laying on her right side, facing the front of the vehicle. She was still partially secured by her seatbelt. Dominic was located in the front passenger seat, deceased, and was not secure by a seatbelt. Davion was laying in a diagonal position with feet and lower body on the driver's side, rear seat seating area with upper body on the front passenger side. Davion was also not secured by a seatbelt. The next slide shows 2 rudimentary sketches provided by police showing the approximate positions of the 3 occupants. These are two basic sketches provided by police showing the positioning of all occupants of the vehicle. If you will note, these sketches were not made at the time of the crash or within a few days following the crash, but 5 months after the crash. It should be noted that in the state of Ohio, it has been mandatory for operator and passengers to be restrained by a seatbelt since May 6, 1986. This information is provided because it has been mandatory for Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion to wear a seatbelt since birth and should be considered second nature. Had Dominic and Davion been wearing their seatbelts, their deaths could have been prevented, or at the very least, the chances of their deaths greatly reduced. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, in 2022, approximately 50% of fatalities occurred when the occupant was not been restrained by their seatbelts.
In 2022, 25,420 passenger vehicle occupants were killed. About 50% of those killed were not buckled, based on known seat belt use. Seat belts saved an estimated 14,955 lives and could have saved an additional 2,549 people if they had been wearing seat belts in 2017 alone. The consequences of not wearing, or improperly wearing, a seat belt are clear. 1. Buckling up helps keep you safe and secure inside your vehicle, whereas not buckling up can result in being totally ejected from the vehicle in a crash, which is almost always deadly. 2. Airbags are not enough to protect you. In fact, the force of an airbag can seriously injure, or even kill you if you're not buckled up. 3. Improperly wearing a seat belt, such as putting the strap below your arm, puts you and your children at risk in a crash. The benefits of buckling up are equally clear. If you buckle up in the front seat of a passenger car, you can reduce your risk of fatal injury by 45%. Kahane, 2015. Moderate to critical injury by 50%. If you buckle up in a light truck, you can reduce your risk of fatal injury by 60%. Kahane, 2015. Moderate to critical injury by 65%. INSA, 1984. 1. Buckling up is the single most effective thing you can do to protect yourself in a crash. Seat belts are the best defense against impaired, aggressive, and distracted drivers. Being buckled up during a crash helps keep you safe and secure inside your vehicle. Being completely ejected from a vehicle is almost always deadly. 2. Airbags are designed to work with seat belts, not replace them. If you don't wear your seat belt, you could be thrown into a rapidly opening frontal airbag. Such force could injure, or even kill you. Learn about airbag safety. 3. Guidelines to buckle up safely. The lap belt and shoulder belt are secured across the pelvis and rib cage, which are better able to withstand crash forces than other parts of your body. Place the shoulder belt across the middle of your chest, and away from your neck. The lap belt rests across your hips, not your stomach. Never put the shoulder belt behind your back, or under an arm. 4. Fit matters. Before you buy a new car, check to see that its seat belts are a good fit for you. Ask your dealer about seat belt adjusters, which can help you get the best fit. If you need a roomier belt, contact your vehicle manufacturer to obtain seat belt extenders. If you drive an older or classic car with lap belts only, check with your vehicle manufacturer about how to retrofit your car with today's safer lap, shoulder belts.
As the statistics from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration show, it is possible that Dominic and Davion's deaths could have been prevented, or at least the chances greatly reduced had they been properly buckled in. The next slide will show a crash test conducted by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. The crash test is a 2018 Toyota Camry, the same make, model, and year as Mackenzie's vehicle. This crash mimics the crash that occurred with Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion, which is to say it is a offset passenger front side impact test. According to the IIHS, this test is called small overlap front, passenger side. The condition is similar to the crash that occurred in Strongsville. The test was conducted at 40 miles per hour. According to the ratings, the vehicle passed. Based upon the simulated injury indicators on the test mannequins, they would have survived the crash with little to no injuries. Had the speed been increased, more serious injuries would be expected, but the likelihood that the injuries would have been fatal would have been reduced due to the seatbelt and airbags. This provides additional reasonable belief that had Dominic and Davion been properly belted in as recommended, they may still be alive today. Fire department rescue personnel were called in to provide vehicle extrication. After fire department rescue personnel freed Mackenzie, she was placed in a cervical collar to prevent head movement and she was placed on a backboard for stabilization. Prior to being transported to the hospital by helicopter, members of the fire department loaded Mackenzie into the back of an ambulance on scene and provided basic stabilization care prior to the flight. It was noticed that Mackenzie's heart rate was somewhat normal, but her oxygen level at the time was at 82%. According to the Cleveland Clinic, anything lower than 88% is considered a medical emergency. During this time, the personnel providing care conducted a search on Mackenzie and discovered drugs, mushrooms, and a small digital scale with unknown residue at the time. Later tests showed drug residue. The helicopter arrived on scene and Mackenzie was transported to the hospital. While it is appropriate to state that the driver of a vehicle is responsible for the occupants inside of that vehicle, it really isn't absolute. Examples: parents ensuring that their children ranging in ages of 2 to 12 years old and properly buckled in. Versus a 17-year-old, petite female driver versus a 19-year-old male and 20-year-old male who are bigger and stronger. This concludes Part 4.